This is Keyed In with Max and Brent, unlocking the minds of the industry's top real estate professionals. And now, here are your hosts, Max Rabin and Brent Jackson.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Keyed In Podcast. I'm Max Rabin.
And I'm Brent Jackson.
Brent, today we have some awesome guests on. We've got Jeremy and Justin Kittrell of Kittrell Industries. Kittrell Industries is a local developer. Jeremy and Justin have been in the game for a long time. It's a little bit of a different type of show for us today to talk to some home builders.
Exactly. Find out what they're looking for in a property and what they're looking for in an agent.
Guys, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us. Good
morning. So tell us how you got started in the industry in DC and a little bit about your history.
So actually, my dad and my sister started the real estate business in the mid-'80s.
Mm-hmm.
And I came behind them, and then Justin followed me about 6 years later. Took it from basically a rental boutique business into a full-scale development business.
Okay.
Where are the rentals at?
Southeast DC.
Southeast. Are they affordable rentals or just...
Affordable is not the word I would use. $300 rents? Yeah.
That's what they are now. That's what they were.
That's what they were.
That sounds high for them.
Rents were $300 a month. You were probably buying in at about $4,000 to $5,000 a door.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you guys still have these rentals?
Some of them. Most of them we moved on, but some of them we still have.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of developers we talk with have that kind of, they start exactly like that. They have their rental portfolio. A lot of it will be Section 8 housing because it's a guaranteed stream of income when the market goes up and down. So it's interesting.
I think that format really worked in the initiation, but I think with the rising cost of assets, I think that's become a little difficult. So most of the banks want to see a 1.5 to 1 ratio when they're underwriting these deals to look at the availability of funding for rental assets. And a lot of times with the cost of acquisition and rehab, by the time you put the product back out on the street, you don't have that ratio. So even with the Section 8 rents being guaranteed, the assets are so expensive that it just doesn't make sense.
Right. I mean, you're diving right into the tricky part here is that the challenges with developers in general, that especially everyone we talk to all the time, is just the cost of everything. And it's very different now than ever, basically. So let's just go right into that. So tell us about the kinds of things that you're involved in now and why, and what are the challenges facing you as a developer in the district?
I think, so our company is split in a really diverse fashion. Of course, me and Justin come together and talk about all the deals. And we have another brother who works in the back end, the finance part of it. His name is Jason. But one of the most interesting parts is, so for me, I'm kind of the infrastructure guy. Justin deals with all of the design, all of the end product, the pretty stuff. But one of the things is that when you lay the deal out, we both put our head together, all three of us, and we lay the deal down on the table and we look at it. And I'll say that this inflation factor is very different now, because when we had a boom and a bust before, actually it's happened 2 times, but go back to the year 2000 and then drive forward to the year 2010. And in both situations, people realistically didn't have money. But that's not the factor now. The factor is that people have money and they've become wise from their knowledge about how things occurred, but the deals just don't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So you're fighting with the seller on the front side saying, hey, this house isn't worth this much money, but some venture capital company or some, retirement fund is in the back pushing with huge cash and they're banking on 30 years from now, the asset will be worth more. We can kind of fold our people's money in here and, we'll shift it in and out in 15 years when that bond runs out and when they draw retirement, and we'll make sense out of it and it's assured growth. But then on the other side, I'm the developer. Justin's going, I ran the numbers, the deal doesn't make sense. We can't buy it. Lumber, a piece of plywood is now $100 at Home Depot. And then I got Brent and Rob saying it's a good deal. Buy it. It's a spread in the back.
Everything's a good deal for us.
Yeah, what's the spread on that deal? Like $20,000, or what kind
Yeah,
of spread are you doing?
20,000. Like, that's what else do you need?
I mean, you know, a $300,000 spread is dangerous today.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the buyer's coming down the street and you're using Redfin and, you know, Zillow, and they're saying, okay, I see you got it on for 1.9. I understand you put all this hard work into it. Oh, Justin, the design is so beautiful. Can you come work on my other condo? But I'm gonna offer you $150,000 less.
Right.
That's the problem. Because once we pay the commission, once we pay the transfer and recordation, once we deal with capital, you know, for the carrying costs, what do you have? And this is the issue with the deals, you know, and so that's going to be a hurdle that has never been crossed before in the market.
So you're talking about essentially single family deals. Sounds like home flips. Are you also doing like brand new construction ground up?
Both.
Both.
And in the multi-unit side.
Okay.
The condo market is absolutely dead. And the only people who are acquiring multi-units right now have federal money. Everybody. Oh, I got an affordable housing grant. I got this. But just for the person looking to buy, you know, that I want to own an apartment building, I want a 40-unit building. No, you can't make sense out of the deal.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're looking at projects, Rob and I both, someone gave us a piece of advice way back when, and it's your back of the napkin math. So if it comes across our desk, we look at it real quick. It's $1 million acquisition. Can this seller / developer get $2 million out of the gate? If they can't, then we're like, well, it doesn't make sense. We've got to scale the 1 million back to 800 if it's a 1.8 or 1.9 outsell. Is there a quick equation that you guys have? Because everybody's got different input numbers, right? Their cost to build. The lowest I've heard is $1.75 a square foot. We just completed our house. I think we were $500 a square foot to build. You just mentioned lumber. We were at $10 a square foot for lumber, and then it jumped up to $40 or $50 a square foot. So the cost of lumber was expensive. It was cheaper for us to put steel in the house than it was wood.
Yeah, I mean, and we found that out. We do a lot of steel when we build, so that's an advantage for us. We got steel people on site, you know, in the company. So Jeremy always says it's cheaper to use the steel, so cheaper to use the steel. But I think as far as a mathematical equation that we use, we try to use a 60-40 rule. And if it's not 60-40, it's probably not a good deal.
So 60-40, if it was $1 million, you need to have 60%. I got it.
Yeah.
So tell us about, you're talking about like how things have evolved in DC over the years in terms of you know, where the money is, how people are funding like larger deals that are kind of like you're out of the ballgame if you're a small developer on multifamily. Condo market is obviously very tricky, as you're just talking about. But like, what about like, tell us about the new DC, like the new DC. What does it mean to you guys as developers? Like, do you feel like there like this flow of money and these high prices, it's sustainable and continuing? Like, what do you think about the market right now?
Well, see, I had this thought a long time ago that, you know, DC is the world's capital, not just the nation's capital. And then the concept of the damage that happened to the city in 1968 was really a reset button. So for a long time, you had a situation where there was a plethora of abandoned properties that were dilapidated, owners who had lower income base. But you got to go back and look at DC prior to that. It was a flourishing city. It was blooming and bustling through U Street, everywhere. Anacostia, on and on and on. This place was finished. I mean, there were theaters, there was the arts. And then people sort of evacuated the city. So when you look at the dynamic of how things have developed, I would say that it's really a cycle more than so much a new DC. And then you have to take the equation of putting money into perspective. So $1 today is probably 10 cents in 15 years from now. So when you look at that, the money really hasn't changed so much. It's just that the amount of money that people are making is not keeping up with the factors that are driving price up.
Right.
It's not that I want to sell a house for $2.5 million. I have to.
Yeah.
Because if I don't, then we don't make money.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to build a quality product, that's sort of where you fall into the difference in price range. Why this house is, $750 a foot, completely renovated, versus the developer who's selling their house for $675 a foot. What did they do?
Right. Where did they cut that cost? Yeah.
And we start talking about the agents and knowing people who know the product and looking at what you're getting. That there's a true difference in that price point. And if you're asking for a number, you have to provide the quality. It's like, selling a Toyota with a Mercedes badge on it. There's a real difference in the cars. You got to get it, look at it, open it up, look at the manufacturing of the pieces, how it was assembled, what kind of appliances, looking at the infrastructure of the house. Or did somebody just come, drill the walls, run some wire, patch the wall up, and then just put the house back in the market for sale?
Right.
And then when that buyer is calling you back in 5 years saying, we got 2 kids, we need a bigger house, and you go there and look at it and you go, well, I'm sorry, but I don't think I can get much more than you paid for it. That's where all of that kicks in.
Yeah, we see quite a variety of different product. All in pick your neighborhood too. It's not necessarily like if you say you're in like Northwest DC 20016, it's not necessarily always going to be like a luxury product. There's all kinds of different stuff going on. So you really have to keep your eyes open for that.
I think that's a product of the pandemic bubble, right? It's developers that were amateurs, and you guys are very skilled at your trade, been doing it for decades. Developers that get in, and I learned this very early on. One of the developers, Lily, said, we're going to put lipstick on a pig and get it back out onto the market. It was a condo project back in like 2010. And they got their numbers, but that's exactly what they did. They didn't go behind the walls, into the floors, the ceilings. They literally just freshened up the bathrooms and kitchens and put it back out, and they got their numbers.
And I think that's what happened with the pandemic. It really started to push those type of developers out because you see so much stuff sitting on the market. And people are like, I'm not spending my money for something I know doesn't look right, or I can tell it's just some cosmetic outside research done on the product. So you also said, are the numbers going to keep rising? Well, we know DC is what, 30% occupiable, 33%, and the rest is federal territory. So numbers ain't going down.
Right.
You can't build anywhere.
It's an interesting question, right? And this might sound raw on a soundbite, but it's a loaded question because you're going back to like 1968. You kind of see what's going on with the inner cities in the USA right now, whether it's New York, Baltimore, LA, pick your city, USA. But because you're allowed to work remote, you see a lot of people leaving DC. And then you got like the crime, the homelessness, and all of that as well. But it's like, I'm seeing it in our place where people are like leaving inner city DC and they're going to Montgomery County, Fairfax, or they're going somewhere else because they can work in Florida and come in and check in, once or twice a month. You guys, what do you guys think about that? Am I totally off base, or Max? What do you think?
I mean, let them answer first, and we can roundtable it.
I think that's a false balloon, and I'll tell you why I say that. Living in Montgomery County comes with this caveat. Do you want to go 30 minutes to the grocery store? I was talking to a buddy of mine. He's an underwriter in the bank, and he said that he has to drive his daughter literally 30 minutes every morning to school and 45 minutes back home. He doesn't have that time. So when you move to these places running for security, we got crime in no man USA every day.
Yeah.
I think part of living in New York was always, I'm getting on the train, I'm going to get mugged. Or somebody's going to break the window out of my car when I go into a bar.
Right.
So as much as these things are happening, they're happening everywhere. Maybe not at the same magnitude because you don't have the same concentration of people. But eventually, every time somebody goes out, somebody else comes back in. Now you got to look at one other cycle. The age of the owners of these properties, they're at a retirement place. So one of the things that happened with COVID was the people who were on the edge about, well, should I quit this job that I make $250 a year at? I don't really have to work hard. I got it figured out. Or now it's so dangerous to go in the workplace. I'm gonna get sick. I don't feel like the hustle and bustle anymore. It's just my cue that I should retire. But there's also the young up and coming professional who's ready to go down that path, have that life experience, and they're gonna buy these houses and they're gonna move in. Turning the corner a little bit, it changes the aesthetic of how the house needs to be finished, because the younger buyer doesn't want the old historic house. They want the outside to look that way, but they want to come inside and be able to push a button and watch it work. And so
Yeah.
I think we're getting a change that's going to lead to a real explosion in growth. Like if New York is taking a converted brownstone that was turned into a condo and flipping it back to a brownstone and selling it for $8 million, guess what's going to happen here in 20 years?
Totally agree.
I was thinking about that as well.
Oh,
like,
it's coming.
yeah.
And houses, if your average luxury list is 2.1, get ready for it to be 6.1.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to happen because the diversity of the occupants of the city is changing.
Yeah.
Like drastically.
When we lived in the West Village for a year, and this is before I knew anything about tenant rights and all that, but before we signed the lease, we had to sign a piece of paper waiving our rights because it was a 5-unit building that they in turn sold for, I think it was $8 million. This was back in like early 2005 or 6. Someone bought it, and we still go up there. It's 56 Charles Street, West Village. There's a Mary's Fish Camp in New York City, stomping ground there. But it has since traded, I think it was like $20 million. But that's exactly what they did. And there's other ones on the block and around the Bend that have done the exact same thing. They're co-ops. They recapture the co-op space and then they convert them back into the fee simple brownstone. It's interesting.
Jeremy, where do you live in DC?
In Logan.
Logan. And we're both born and raised DC guys.
Yeah.
Justin, you too?
Yep.
Absolutely right.
Well, hospital. That's what.
Oh, we're gonna talk about hospital.
Sibley.
I'm Sibley. Sibley. You Washington?
Washington Hospital.
I'm Sibley too.
All right. So here's what I'll say. Like, so during the pandemic, when I was talking about moving in with my girlfriend and her 2 kids, we were like looking at all kinds of different houses because we needed the space, right? And I went, and again, being in this area like my whole life, I'm very familiar with Bethesda. I'm very familiar with like all of our little surrounding areas. And you're right about the time that it takes to do everything. It's like that extra 20 minutes.
Yeah.
The reality of the extra 20 minutes to do this. Then you're stuck at that traffic signal for another 10 that you didn't expect.
Yeah.
And you just added an hour onto your day just sitting there for no reason.
Yeah.
And I know that people are looking for different things in their lifestyle. And you know, obviously Montgomery County Schools it's a great school system. You can be part of that. But I just could never, in my mind, just being like growing up in the city, I could never get over that whole idea of being like stuck on that suburban road, like at a big intersection.
I'm with you on that. It's too much traffic in town.
You know,
It's ridiculous. Seriously, yesterday I drove up to Gaithersburg. I had a meeting out there with an attorney on another project. Because one of the diversifications to what we do is we do a bunch of consultant work. And so these guys are doing a big hotel deal down in Mexico and Cabo. And I'm driving through traffic, and halfway there I'm going, why am I in this truck? Because it took me an hour and 20 minutes to go up 270 to get to North Gaithersburg.
yeah, of
And
course.
coming back was an hour and a half, literally. And so, there's a convenience of living in Logan Circle. There's a convenience of living in Columbia Heights or living in downtown Anacostia or living in Noma or wherever. You can jump up. There's a Whole Foods within 10 minutes. You can get an Uber and it won't cost you $100 for the Uber. So, I think that there's give and takes to all of that. And I think in the pandemic, people just felt that there was really like this unknown vacation that had never been heard of, where you could stay at home, stay in your Uggs, keep on your pajamas, and just get on a conference call with a necktie and a shirt above.
Right.
And, we were doing remote settlements on Skype. Like, it was craziness.
Yeah.
So
Um, on the same topic of like being in the city for so long, because you guys are from DC, you've been working in the city in this industry. Um, we're the same age, and it's like I just want to like I want to know like if you can speak off the top of your head, like how do you feel about that? Like we never left basically, and then we're still here. We're seeing the city evolve. I think about this all the time when I'm driving from place to place and I'm seeing the same blocks and driving up and down Connecticut Avenue for that, I don't know, 4 millionth time. I don't even know how many times. Like, do you find that surreal, or tell me about that?
I'm gonna let Justin answer that question because we had this debate all the time.
No, you can go ahead. Then I'll chime in.
I just think, you know, this is an interesting scenario because we worked on 2 developments in New York, Midtown. We did one at 60 East 127, and we did another single family up in the top of the Bronx. But if you've ever been somewhere and you really don't know where you're standing at, that's a good place to go because you will get turned around in a circle. I think being a Washingtonian and you've been here your whole life, you get to know the players. You get to know the rules, which help you in expanding on your reach about what you can get done. You know, so me and Brent and Rob talk about stuff all the time, and they're like, well, we say we're going to call you because we know you know somebody that can get it done. And I think it becomes home. And it also becomes home in a professional manner because you're comfortable about who to call, who I needed to reach out to on Capitol Hill, who I got to call at DCRA or the Department of Buildings now. And so I think that's the advantage in being able to master your footprint.
Mm-hmm.
And to chime in, I just, like you said, riding up and down Georgia Avenue, Connecticut Avenue, going to DC public schools and all this. You see the development now, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
But what me and Jeremy talked about, I think it was 2018 or 19,
yeah.
And everybody kept saying, when is the market going to crash? And I said, Jeremy, in 2020, 2021. And this is before the pandemic. I didn't know it was coming.
Mm-hmm.
But just watching the trends, I said, 2020 is going to really, it's going to spell something different for everybody.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic came and it happened, and people were like, what are you, like a psych? I was like, no, we were just looking at the trends because we remembered in 2007 or 2008, around that time it happened. But just to see the city built up and like going down Southwest and now Navy Yard, it's amazing. Me and Jeremy used to go dump trash down there. It was a trash dumpster. Like that's where you go. We first started out early 2000s, like 2000, 2001. It was a trash yard, nothing else. Now you see all that development down there. It's just amazing. Like all those apartment buildings that were just abandoned land. So to see it all develop, it's like, I don't know where I'm at half of the time.
Right.
I mean, just see big buildings and hotels and restaurants. And you just remember 10 years ago, this was a trash dump.
Not to mention like the club life of the 1990s. And I mean, all the places I used to haunt, gone. And like, you know, that's Navy Yard basically.
Yeah.
It's just, it's
that's
like.
because you stopped going.
Huh?
That's because you stopped going.
Yeah, that's right. You stopped seeing my face around there.
No, they tore that stuff down. That's interesting you say that because you may know, but we own Vegas Lounge, and you know that place was originated in 1969.
Yeah.
So we're talking forward now, 51 years in operation, and it's amazing because I think about all the different places that you used to go to hang out at, Georgetown, Southwest, you know, up and down Georgia Avenue. This city is so different.
So different.
Funny thing is, you know, the city puts out this book from the Department of Planning every 17 years. And in this book, they prognosticate what they're going to develop, what's the next area to touch, how they'll move on it. So under the Marion Barry administration was when they first derived this concept of coming out with these books of planning. And I still have one in my office, and I look at it, and this book basically is about 25 years old. And all of the Southwest development is on there. The Nats Park Stadium is on there. The funny part is a new Redskins stadium on there, but that never happened. But
They were going to put it down there too, in that area?
they were going to try to build it on the other side where the soccer field is.
Sure. Okay.
And then they jumped onto the idea of putting it in the place of RFK.
Mm-hmm.
And it just never manifested. But looking at that and looking at all of the scale and all of the design, and then you see this stuff like actually come to life.
Yeah.
That's
Heavy.
why I go back to this World Capital thing. That was always the play.
Mm-hmm.
It was always the play.
We're with Jeremy and Justin Kittrell of Kittrell Industries. They're developers here in DC, legacy developers. Back on the ground level, what are the challenges that you find in doing development through the DC government? We talk with developers about this all the time, the ins and outs of working through DC. Can you give us some highlights or lowlights of that?
I had this discussion this morning. And DCRA is a complete mess. But it has always been a mess under every administration. The volume of development is not met with the amount of sophistication that's needed in order to facilitate a smooth and successful movement. So if the city needs to increase tax base, and the developers are the primary source of funding from that agency's perspective, it would make more sense for you to facilitate a much smoother transition, evaluation of permits. But so now you're buying a building, and I think, Justin, you could chime in on this, but in theory, if I go to closing tomorrow and I haven't worked out a way to try to start the permitting process, it could take me 6 to 8 months to acquire a permit, and that's barring that it needs to go before BZA or some DDOE or public space hearing.
Historic.
Yeah, so just think, you're paying Eagle Capital, whatever bank, Founders, carrying costs for 8 months on a property that cost you $1.8 million to buy. Yeah, you might can sell it for $4.5 million, but you're going to give the bank $150,000 before you ever cut the ground.
Right.
It's horrible, and there has to be a better way to manage that.
Any thoughts on why after doing this for so long?
Well, it's a real easy answer to that.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you answer that one.
It's the government.
Yeah.
I mean, the process is we take our time. If you ever notice anybody that works in a government sector, you make a certain amount of money. So if I make $70,000, I'm getting $70,000. I'm only supposed to be working 40 hours. I don't get overtime. In those 8 hours, I'm gonna do this amount of work.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get just enough. And it's no shots at the workers or anything, but it's just the system. So it's just how the system rolls. There's no incentive to make it roll faster.
Yeah.
And then they try to create another program outside. But the program outside of that was outrageous in money that they're asking. Oh, you can get your permit in 2 months. Give us an extra $50,000 and $25,000. Like, who's going to do that?
Right.
Is that the program or is it an expediter?
It's no. The government has. They had an expedited permit program where you pay an enhancement fee to guarantee that you would get a full review within 30 days from the project being put into, at that time it was Project Docs. Now it's Tersus. It's the new system now, which nobody knows how to operate. And not to talk about the new notification process where you got a 5-step notification process to the adjoining neighbor. So along with what Justin is saying, I think the workers should have some enhanced payment. I think that the developers could bear some of that expense. But, in Anne Arundel and in a couple other surrounding counties.
Fairfax,
yeah.
Even Baltimore.
Everywhere. Oh, yeah, Baltimore's a walkthrough process. And D.C. used to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
The point is...
How was D.C. when we was young? What did you do?
Walk down there with your drawings.
On a what?
right in the war room. It was like I used to go to H Street before they ever had North Capitol
Mm-hmm.
for DCRA. And my dad, I would go with him there. You go through the whole floor. All the reviewers sitting in the middle of the floor. You take your drawing. You go to this desk. You go to that desk. They look at it. They sign it. Bam, you gone. You out of there. And people were building buildings at that time with hand drawn drawings. Yeah, it's gonna look like this. I still have some of those drawings from some of the construction that my dad was developing back in the day. And literally, they used a ruler and put a measurement on it, and you gone. But I think that the reshaping of DCRA starts with the viability of the contractors. Like, these people need to be certified. You need to be sure that these people know how to build a house. Because we really don't do home improvement, but because we hold a license for certain people, we'll go in, we'll take on the project, we'll help with certain home improvement projects. And some of the work that I see is horrific. So that's number one. You got to get control over the builders. Number two, as it relates to the permits, there has to be a way that you can guarantee that from the date that this is submitted, that within a 30-day period, we can get this permit out of there. Now, do I need to pay $5,000 to get an assigned date that I can come down and I can be guaranteed to have all of my reviewers in front of me? That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's cheaper for me to pay the $5,000, get a set date to get in front of everybody. And then if it's a review that needs to happen, you give me a certain amount of time to make the change and come back. You look at it and let's go. But that's not how that's happening. I mean, there's literally projects that are stuck.
Yeah.
So
14 months, 12 months.
Case in point, the one we're working on now on Capitol Hill. We've created a draft to circle to the neighbors. We've now gotten in contact with the historic preservation people. But the way this looks, I need to know that I got a permit before I close. Because if we can't stay on schedule to deliver that property by September, then we're going to lose our head. Because now interest rates are 8.75%. So prime plus the bottom, and wherever the bank sets the prime plus at, and most of them are prime plus 1.5. You're looking at 8.25% in interest carry alone, and that's compounding interest because the note's so short.
Yeah.
It could cost you $200,000 in carrying costs to do a 2-family flat development.
Then deal's almost over right there.
It's done.
Yeah.
Because people out here, they say, oh yeah, we're making so much money. No, they're lying.
So that's a good segue, switching gears to financing. Have you seen rates going up? I've heard some of the big banks are cutting back what they're lending out to developers. Do you guys do friends and family money? Like, how are you guys financing some of these projects?
The banks have definitely put the brakes on. They're looking at projects with a magnifying glass right now. Whereas when you knew that you could put the project on last year, everything was going 100 over, 75 over, multiple offers on every listing. It didn't matter if you were selling a trash can. But now, what's happening is, the wholesaler's got his foot in the deal. Then the developer's getting it. The developer thought he could do one thing. The material cost increased by 30%. The outsell is down by 15 to 18%. And then the developer walks back to the bank and says, yeah, I know I put 25% down, but if I don't run from this project now, I'm going to lose $500,000. So here, you can have the keys. I'm out of it. So the banks are going, yeah, okay. All right. Nope. They're not even returning phone calls on specific deals. You better underwrite it yourself. You better know what they're looking for. You need to package it right. It needs to make sense. And there needs to be a window to look at the project and say, if the outsell reduces by 25%, we can still make money. That deal gets bought. But everything that's kind of sketchy, no, they're not even going to look at it. And I don't blame them. And the hard money guys are done. They just don't have the money. How did they get the money? They had assets. They take the assets, or they group fund.
Yeah.
They go around to every doctor in the city and say, hey, give me $500,000. I'm going to return you X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, that money's dried up.
Yeah, because the doctors lost all their money in the stock market. Bitcoin that was 63,000 is now 23,000 this morning. Yeah. So when you examine that, or the hard money guys who had lines of credit based on assets that are not worth what they were before. So
And everybody's scared more than anything.
I was scared to death.
Scared to get burnt. So the banks are definitely new developers. No, you're not getting nothing. Now, there's some hard money people out here that give you money, but at what rate? 14%.
3 points.
Yeah, so
16%. 3 points.
But think about what you're saying though in terms of like the broader market. You're talking about like for private hard money. It's like with the stock market pullback last year, we'll add crypto into the mix, you know, in some degree. I'm hopefully like we weren't playing in that pool, but and then you have the real estate market pull back, regular commercial or conventional interest rates going up. Like that's the whole market right there. And so for developers, that's a very dry well. It's a very dry well.
I can tell you that at one point we were getting one deal probably every 4 months. Between me and Justin, we see 14 to 20 deals a day. And we punt 95% of them. They're just not deals.
Right.
And I don't know who's teaching people how to look at deals or how to underwrite them.
Oh, they're watching TikTok, don't you know?
They're just not deals.
Those deals, are they coming across via agents or sellers or banks?
they come agents,
Everywhere.
The banks have them. And you got random people that know that you're in real estate. They come in, you know, they come from every source right now because everybody is trying to make $1. And they don't know how to get $1, but they need to make $1. And hey, it's a deal. And when you hear it, like Jeremy said, you vet the deal, you look at the numbers. It just don't even make sense when they're talking about it. And the one thing that I have a problem with is Zillow and Redfin. The numbers that they put on stuff and tell people like, oh yeah, your house is worth $800,000. They've never seen this house, etc., etc., and the house is really worth $500,000. And these people are stuck on these numbers because that's what the internet says.
Yeah.
So it kind of helps and it hurts. And that's why a lot of deals are really not deals because people are looking at Zillow, Redfin, and they say, hey, this is what they said I could get. And they stuck in their head with it like, this is what I can get. And all actuality, it's not worth that price.
Or you can go the opposite direction, like Dan Snyder. His house just hit the market. His Redfin's estimate is, or Redfin estimate was 6.8 million. He's got it on the market for 50.
Yeah, didn't he pay like $48 million?
I don't know what he paid,
I don't
but
know.
I sent that to the team. I'm like, it's 50 million. Like, this is something to show your, depending on what side of the coin you're on and what message you're trying to send. You know, 6.8 million is the Redfin estimate.
Yeah,
He's
so
got it on
that's
for
the
50.
offer.
Right.
Earlier you said the condo market is a little tricky right now. You guys do condos though? You do condo development?
We do.
Mhm.
But I think the market's dead.
Okay.
I think the low interest rates were driving people to buy anything because the thing was you need to be a real estate owner. But I think the condo market, again, does not present a fee simple property. You're really a joint owner of a building with someone else. And you need to sell it. But they sort of built too many too fast. A perfect example to that over at like 5th and New York Avenue in Old City 1 or whatever they want to call it, Noma or whatever.
Okay.
So a lot of those buildings are rentals, but some of them were actually slated to be condos. But in theory, you have 50,000 rental units in one CMA with probably a 40% occupancy rate. This is all TIA craft money,
Right.
Liberty Mutual retirement money.
Yeah.
This is where we put your money at because we're saying we're not going to put it in a stock. We're not going to put it in a risky bond. We're going to buy real estate assets. And what we're banking is true. In time, real estate in this region has never proven to go backwards. But as a boutique builder, you're bumping up against somebody that has unlimited cash flow. And so you're going to build a 4 or 5 unit building and you're going to get out there in the marketplace And I'm telling you, if you look in MRS right now or in the multiple list system, and there are tons of available condos. So I'm building this, and I got the money again from the banker at 8.5%, and I finished this project in 18 months, and I'm sitting there.
Yeah.
And it takes me a year to sell the units. You made nothing.
It's really touch and go with the condos, and we're seeing the market sort of, things are flowing a little bit more since.
They picked back up, especially after the new year, but the fall for the condo market, in my opinion, was dead.
It really stacked up the inventory.
Yes.
And we're starting to see some of this stuff flow now, but it's a lot of units, and there's always more coming on. And whether it's like row house conversion, a small boutique building on like 2 empty lots or something, there's a lot of units in pretty much every quadrant of the city. So I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I think if a buyer wants to buy something and they can be there for the next, 7 to 10 years, it's a great investment because they can steal right now, especially if they look and it's been on for, 100 and some days and the developer's sweating bullets. I mean, you might even get the developer below his base.
Right.
And that's it's sad, but that's the case. So exactly why we chase fee simple buildings. We can pinpoint the expense. We can pretty much pinpoint the return, and we can control the finish.
Absolutely.
What's the ideal project look for you guys? I mean, is that it in a nutshell? It's the fee simple where you control all the variables. So if we have agents that are listening to us now, they'll reach out to you. But like, what's the perfect deal for an agent to send you guys?
I'm gonna tell you right now. I was looking at the list of questions, and it was like, "What's the next neighborhood to pop?" There is no specific neighborhood. There's no specific deal. 3 things that gotta happen. 1, you can't pay too much money for it. You have to always be pessimistic with an optimistic outcome. So if the deal says that it will return $150,000, you need to anticipate that you're only going to get 70. One thing is, you're working on this old house. We didn't build it, so we don't know what the body of it looks like once you take all the clothes off of it. That's number 1. And number 2, you need to sort of envision how the person will use it. Now, this is where this gets super tricky at, and we talk about this all the time. The real secret to all of this is being able to put yourself in the place of the person that's going to buy the house. Because if the house doesn't function and it doesn't make people fall in love, you got a problem. Case in point, 919 French Street. Everybody's looked at this building. And they came in and people were like, well, it's not worth that much because the house across the street. Yeah, did you go in the house across the street? They sold a $1.9 million house that doesn't even have a gas stove in it. You said you were going to charbroil a steak. How? So one of the things that Justin does that's extremely unique from any of the other interior designers is that he is walking through the building, and in his mind, he's envisioning, how is she going to hang her clothes up? How much space does he need for his tennis shoes? They need a room to play 2K or whatever they're playing. Because remember, this is not the 75-year-old guy that's buying the house. This is the new 45-year-old guy that wears tennis shoes with a suit. He's hip, he's modern, he wants a fast car, he likes nice watches,
Is it Brent Jackson? Is that your buyer?
Sounds like him.
I could update my watches though.
One day. If that's not your thing, I know you love cars, but
Yeah.
Everybody got something. But so Justin is amazing at being able to capture that. So what happens is, and we're probably at fault for this. I don't care. The agents listening, they might kill us. We get everybody to come to the house. If you're a player, we looked you up. We figure out what your analytics say you can do. Come look at the house. If you got a buyer, bring them. And then we figure out at the end of that, who is the person who would be in touch with this buyer? Because it's important. Every agent doesn't fit every neighborhood. And maybe not every neighborhood, but every deal is specific. because you got to know there is a buyer for every house. I don't care if it's 8 houses in Georgetown. None of them are the same. We're building something in Georgetown now that has a mini golf course in the back. There's no other house in Georgetown like that. But this is what we do. You know, people say, flip my ride. Yeah, that's what we're into. And we try to master the art, to really dig into the psychology of who is going to be the buyer. It may be a pool of people, but we want to know for sure that we have what it takes to make them fall in love. Because remember, you're paying $2 million for a house. The thing is, at this point, we really aren't building the $1 million house. We're really treading in another place. And that person already owns a house. If they're buying a house at that price point, it needs to be something that they want, not that they need. So now you got to hit every area of what warms this person up. And then the last thing is in the marketing. I see all of this marketing people kick out. They put this TikTok, they put this, they put that, you know, and it's a bunch of wasted money, to be honest. Why are you marketing to people who aren't your consumer? A guy who works every day, loves to drive a Toyota, enjoys going to play golf, why would he be trying to buy a two-door Ferrari and he got 4 kids in the house? So I heard this saying one time that Ferrari doesn't use print marketing. And I was like, what? No, because they specifically marketing to the consumer. That marketing starts in the design. He does an excellent job of capturing that. And then from the design, you have the product to sell. But when you design it, you have to be thinking about, how am I going to move this product? What's the basis for doing it? What area should I market it in? How do I get that person into the property who can afford it right now and who would be willing to buy it? And I think once you get that, there is no neighborhood, there's no limit to price, there's none of that. But you have to get that figured out. And once you do, you're able to sell anything.
I mean, you're hitting, that's a really important aspect, though, when you're talking about the design of these houses and in terms of what your buyer, who your buyer is. And you're absolutely right. We see plenty of projects and products out here where you can tell either very little or almost no thought was put into the design of something as simple as like a primary closet, right? Which is like, when you're talking about it, the type of house that someone's going to desire, not just need, but they're going to want it, it's going to have like a few key aspects. And one of those things is like the primary suite's got to be pretty nice.
Yeah, on point.
You know? And
sure.
And so like to me, it starts there: kitchen, space to hang out. And if you're not working on that as a developer and you think you're going to be able to like flip any row house or be simple anything, and you think you're going to get that higher end number, it's just not going to happen, because there's going to be something else out there for that buyer that they're going to want more.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's on. But I will say really quickly about the marketing, because, you know, we're realtors and we just put it out there, man.
He loves TikTok.
You know me, I love TikTok. Look, it's not all the same. I mean, for me, I think I've been fortunate on those platforms. But I think, you know, what a lot of agents do is it's like a new version of the old fashioned thing where they're sending out like 1 million flyers, or they're sending out like they're making a million cold calls expecting for something to stick. This is just sort of the newer form of that, but it doesn't always translate for everyone. Like I said, I think I've just been kind of fortunate, and it can lead to real business. I wouldn't say, I see on a couple occasions I've sold properties directly off doing that and going really wide with something. But you're right, it's usually going to be that conversation with the agent who really knows this level of business and is likely to have that client, and you clearly are on top of that too. And so I'm sure it's tough to have you as a client too, because you're going to call that agent and say, have you called this agent? Have you called this agent today? Am I right?
It happens all the time. Like, you can't sell a house in Georgetown and you haven't called Rankin, JT, or Nancy. Like, sure. You crazy?
Right.
Like, how are you going to move it? Or the Hatfield sisters, like, you can't move something over there without calling those agents, you know, or saying, I'm coming to Logan. I didn't call Brent and Rob. Like, what are you doing?
Absolutely.
Because 9 times out of 10, You know, if they don't know the buyer, somebody in their office has the buyer.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And again, identifying who your clientele is and how to reach them. That's the developer's job. You know,
His job is, if you're in the game, you got to know how you play in the game.
that's right.
A lot of people play in the game, but they don't know the rules to it. So once you learn the rules and the players in the game, then you can play.
That's well said.
Absolutely.
Where do you guys see yourself in 10 years?
I'm gonna be in Tahiti in 10 years.
I just had a feeling you were going to say I'm like at the beach, period.
This is a very interesting marketplace. I can tell you that we do not endeavor to do this for a lifetime. This business is becoming excessively difficult. It's just not the same anymore.
Right.
So at some point, it's like, if you love what you do, then you can passionately continue with it. But when you start to like fall out of love with it, then your product starts to reflect it. So maybe we still building in DC in 10 years. I don't know, but we are working on and targeting some really innovative things that would kind of put us in a different position, more in the management of larger construction projects.
That's good.
We're out of time. Actually, you know, like there's one more thing that I kind of wanted to touch on, because this is something I'm kind of obsessed with lately, is like AI and Chat GPT. I don't know if you guys are like using that or anything. I mean, I'm already starting to use it in my business. I'm just wondering, like, do you see a future for using AI to try to help get things like through the development process? Have you even started to put this into play?
So a lot of the new architects that are walking down the street who process this stuff are really huge on animation, 3D, AI, so forth and so on. I'm really an old school handshake developer. It's just how I learn.
Yeah.
Now, I think the innovation of technology to supplement what we're doing is something that we definitely use. But I don't know how far that's going to go, because, you know, it's kind of like, so I'm a collector of watches. A guy calls me yesterday. He says, I got a watch that you're looking for. I said, but I can't make it. He said, well, you know, I'm going to call a few people. If it's still here in a couple of days, I said, there's no way I can get to New York today. It's not going to happen. Well, we can do a Skype call. We can verify who you are, and you can just send us your credit card, and we'll take care of it like that. I'm like, dude, are you crazy? Like, I'm not doing that.
It's a physical object.
Yeah, so I think, again, we're going back to people falling in love and touching that house.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about buying a house through artificial intelligence that costs $3 million. I think it works to draw a person's excitement.
Yeah.
Case in point, on 3641 Fulton. So Barack Sky took over after about 8 months marketing the property. And he uses a ton of social media and all types of gadgets to get stuff done, these lifestyle videos. That residence was the most viewed house in the history of the internet in the District of Columbia.
Yeah.
Literally, it was the center of COVID. There were 400 people in line on a Saturday to walk through the house because of how it was displayed. But not a single one of them bought it.
Right.
The old school moved it.
That's right.
You know, it was a conversation between two old seasoned agents who've been in the game, who had a buyer who was a physician, and he kind of didn't want anybody to know who he was. And they arranged it, and, you know, he came, he saw it, he brought his wife, she loved it, and the deal got done right there in the middle of the living room floor.
Mm-hmm.
So, great, technology is wonderful, but it doesn't replace the person's emotion.
Yeah, we did look at the 3D printing houses, though.
Yeah, well, that's definitely the curve.
I don't know if it'll fit around here because you don't really have the space. Like, you need that big machine to do it. But, that could be what we were doing in 10 years.
Yeah, because that takes, you only need 4 men to do that and build a whole building.
So it's like, yeah, it's like modular, it's constructed, and they just bring, no. Okay.
They get a computer and they have a machine that they set up, and they come and dig a hole in the ground, and then the machine basically gets all of the architectural dimensions plugged into it, and it literally builds the house
On the spot.
paint,
Concrete.
conduit for electrical, plumbing pipes, everything. Just one printer, and then a guy sitting there like typing and running the printer.
Have you seen this like in action?
4 years ago, International Home Building Show, they had a demonstration of it, and they're doing it right now in Texas, Florida. I mean,
Vegas.
yeah, it's definitely
Places where it's a lot of space.
Sure. More
it's
land.
happening.
Yeah.
And just think, I could put up a whole community in probably 12 months and be calling you guys and like, hey, put a sign out front.
Hmm.
And the houses look good because they're solid concrete buildings.
Right.
That's interesting. I mean, side note, our little guy has a 3D printer, but it's like little kid stuff. So like there was a whistle on the table this morning. I remember just blowing it, but like literally it's a piece of paper, runs through the machine. He decides what he wants and then just prints out. We've got little goals and gadgets and whistles.
Keep him doing that. 'Cause,
That's like on a much smaller level versus living in the house that you've hit go on the print.
Yeah, but it's happening.
Yeah.
You know, it's the wave of the future. You can't get guys to work. So we'll get somebody to print that.
John
house.
Henry.
Jeremy and Justin, thank you so much for coming out today and sharing knowledge and experience with us. Really appreciate it. Great conversation. And Brent's going to hit you with some rapid fire questions.
Thank you, gentlemen. 5 easy questions. First of all, lifelong DC residents, what is your all-time favorite restaurant here in DC? Your go-to spot?
They took them all away. Everything I grew up on is changed. But if I had to say favorite now, just old time favorite, I go Ben's Chili Bowl. I mean, nothing like give you one of those turkey hot dogs, or
Those are good.
get you one of those chili cheeseburgers every now and then. Push your cholesterol up a little bit.
Favorite vacation spot?
I did a lot of traveling. I've been to Mexico, Jamaica. I don't know. It's really no favorite spot. Anywhere it's a beach and some sun.
Tahiti?
No, not Tahiti. No.
I'm going to tell you Turks and Caicos and the provincials because that's where our project is coming. So
Turks and
Okay,
Caicos.
all right.
Do you guys have hobbies outside of development?
Oh yeah. So I play music and I coach basketball and I like to bowl. Just active stuff.
Jeremy?
And I'm a musician, collective watches, and I love fine art.
So both of you guys are musicians. What do you guys play?
So I play drums and I also sing.
And I play drums and bass.
You played.
I grew up playing guitar.
Okay.
Little steel guitar as well. It was a kind of weird thing.
Last live concert you guys went to?
I don't remember. The best concert I ever went to is I saw James Brown and Chuck Brown at 930 Club. And then James Brown died like 6 months later.
When was that?
I had to be like, what was it, like 2009? It was like a spare the moment show. It just
Wow.
like popped up.
930 Club.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was probably the best concert I went to. As
That's
far as
very
seeing
rare.
James Brown and Chuck Brown at 930 Club. I mean, you know how close the proximity you are
Yeah.
to the stage and everything. So it's like, it was one of those DC field things,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? And, you know, it's one of the things we lost. Like, no more Chuck Brown, no more James Brown.
Last show I saw was Kim Waters up in Annapolis. Ramshead. Yeah, that's where I was at.
You guys going to see Beyonce?
No,
No, I'm not paying $6,000.
Is that how much it is? 6,000?
it's ridiculous, man.
Oh my gosh.
So the nosebleeds, I believe, are like $750 or something like that.
That's
so you can sit
crazy.
up in 400s.
Yeah.
And then you see the little blood start trickling out your
Right.
nose.
We saw Lady Gaga, and it might take a little girl because Beyonce's, she's a good singer
Yeah.
and dancer. I was watching her sing, whatever, like put a ring on it, but like she was dancing in high heels.
Yeah.
I don't see how she moves like that in high heels.
You get paid $35 million to show you're moving some
Yeah,
high heels
that's
too.
It's every Broadway dancer.
Right?
Yeah.
You guys are on a deserted island. You get one item with you. What is it going to be?
One item on a deserted island. I mean, if I'm
It's a
on
trick question. You got to
Yeah.
survive.
Exactly.
some
I don't
food.
need no item.
Some food.
Nah, what you gonna take food for?
I
There's
need-
one item you eat once and then you're done. I need a knife or something, man, so I can find some food and defend myself. That's what I'm on a deserted island.
Well, Brad Capel had a good answer. I was listening to their episode with Brad. He said fishing pole. I was like, perfect.
Yes.
I'm going to need that.
Fish for life. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate you having us.
We also always give a donation to a charity of our guest choice. Do you guys have a charity that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Egos Inc.
Egos Inc.
Yep. And that's Education Goals Opportunity Sports.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Keyed In with your hosts, Max and Brent, unlocking the minds of the industry's top real estate professionals. For more information on selling your home, find us online at keyedinpodcast.com. Remember to subscribe to Keyed In on Apple Podcasts or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at Keyed In Podcast, at Rabin Max, and at Brent E. Jackson. And follow Max on TikTok at MaxwellRabin_properties.